Well, hello and welcome to our weekly celebration of Living Spirit at Vita Spiritual Learning Center. I'm delighted to be with you today. And as 2022 is just past halfway, remember that our theme for 2022 is Living Everyday Wonder. And for the month of July, the theme focuses on relationships. Now, this human phase of the soul's journey is blessed with some fascinating abilities. In particular, is the ability to consciously relate. Our big human brains are always trying to make order of everything, even if it does so incorrectly. And that ordering mechanism is constantly comparing, trying to draw comparisons and correlations and connections and causations. In conscious thought, humans are relating one thing to another. And it can be said that humans are relational beings, and relationships are essential to growing consciousness and living your best life. And we and us are essential to this human phase of our soul's journey. It takes others just to keep your body living. And the concept of I or me as something that is esteemable or separate is relatively new to humanity. To put it another way, it wasn't that long ago that selfishness was kind of unacceptable. One's very life depended on being a contributing part of a family or a tribe or a community, and the community took precedence over the individual. Now, the theme for this week is You and I Are We. And at Vita Spiritual Learning Center, I often say, we're here to help you live your best life. And we gather here each week to feel better. Now, as I have found, once I set the intention to feel better, to not live someone else's best life, but to live my best life, with my mind primed with this intention, much of what I do on the everyday has the potential to grow my consciousness. It is that awakened consciousness that's always growing. And my ordinary thoughts and perceptions that are my inner life take on a new dimension in which the exterior can and does help me feel better. Of course, what is true for me is true for you too, and that is everyday wonderful. So looking at You and I Are We, it brought up this motto of the United States, which is E pluribus unum. And loosely translated, it says, out of the many is the one, or comes the one. And it is that kind of syllogistic, we are one. We are the individualizations and particularizations of the one mind, the one love, the one soul, the one body, which is all God. It is God in thought and feeling and being. But to say we are one is kind of confusing. And as one of the inventors of quantum physics, Niels Bohr, said, we are trapped by language to such a degree that every attempt to formulate insight is a play on words. And Bohr said this because both words and syntax, especially the mathematics, couldn't accurately or adequately describe this behavior of the subatomic world. So quantum physicists set about creating new words and new syntax. And that brought the terms boson and fermion and graviton and quark and hadron and gluon and meson. So just like we are one, metaphysics sometimes gets trapped in the language. And today's theme is a good example. You and I are we may not always feel grammatically true or actually true to both you and I. We is often a group with which I don't identify, or you don't identify, or that I do not belong to, or I don't want to be included. And so I often kind of bristle a little bit when I'm kind of painted with that we, us brush. And at other times and in other situations, we and us feels better than anything personal. That belonging or feeling wanted or needed or feeling part of a couple or a family or a team or a community means everything. It means the whole world, and it feels so right in those moments. So in this focus on the everyday wonder of relationships in July, the note said there is only God. And so all of this activity of we and you and me and us is all part of God. You cannot claim to love God while hating yourself. You cannot claim to declare that it is just or a just or equitable universe if you're treating others unjustly and inequitably. And the way you relate to yourself, one another, the world, and with the universal power, those are all interconnected and inseparable. Now, how one uses I versus you versus we sheds a little light on the type of relationships influencing one's spiritual growth. If one is primarily self-focused or focused on another or focused on a group. Or your perception could be that another is focused on you or a group is focused on you. So it kind of works both ways, whether your focus is on me or you or a group or a team or a family or a community, or whether that person or that team or that group might be focused on me. So I invite you just to listen to a statement that I have put into 4 contexts, and this relates to being a little trapped in the language. And the contexts are they, we, you, and I. So here goes. As folks heal and grow in consciousness, they are more likely to have healthy relationships with oneself, with others, and with the community. As we heal and grow in consciousness, we are more likely to have healthy relationships with ourselves and with others and with the community. As you heal and grow in consciousness, you are more likely to have healthy relationships with yourself, with others, and with the community. As I heal and grow in consciousness, I am more likely to have healthy relationships with myself, with others, and with the community. Now, Science of Mind and Spirit is a brilliant teaching, and is a teaching of primarily personal spiritual empowerment. And of the 4 examples, you repeating or saying the I statement is the most powerful for your spiritual growth. It has the biggest impact on your psyche. And as I deliver this message, the you statement is the more influential version. And in other teaching in other cultures, the we statement is the most powerful. Now, in the Science of Mind and Spirit, with the addition of the practitioner to the spiritual counselor to the teaching, the Science of Mind extends beyond just the personal. The other person forms a dyad, and that dyad is designed to amplify the principles and practices and accelerate the healing and growth encompassed in the Science of Mind teaching. And for those who have availed themselves of a practitioner, treated themselves to a practitioner session, you know that it is powerful and transformative, even if that other person is just knowing that spiritual truth for you, even in the midst of whatever challenges. You may not know this for yourself, but having that person know that for you, to behold the spiritual offspring of the Most High God that you are at your essence, is just truly magnificent. And it is life-affirming, and it is consciousness healing. Ernest Holmes often said his work was a continuation of a larger work, and that the science of mind, for that reason, was what he said, open at the top. And the science of mind is growing, and the direction that the teaching is growing in is to that community or that communal context, into a one-to-many and a many-to-one and a many-to-many teaching. Now, the best personal example I can give of how science of mind is growing as a we are in the CSL classes, those classes that are part of a sequence that leads to eventually to becoming, to entering practitioner training and becoming a practitioner, and then finally entering School of Ministry or School of Spiritual Leadership and becoming a more advanced spiritual leader of some sort. And where that particularly played out for me was in the spiritual practices that we shared in those classes. So to set the scene, I'm in a group of folks that are at a similar point on their spiritual journey. And we've entered into a kind of a sacred circle. And in that sacred circle, each of us was safe to explore and to grow. So I healed and grew in ways that were only possible during those times in class, like when we were meditating together. Perhaps we were doing some kind of a group treatment or affirmation. Perhaps we were just sharing a reading. We may have been engaging in a group journaling exercise. Or maybe we were visioning for the group or the class, or maybe we were visioning for someone in the group. But all of the dimension that those shared spiritual practices took on opened me up to things that I hadn't come across in my personal spiritual practice. Mind you, it didn't replace them, it just added to my personal spiritual practices. And then what you might notice about the spiritual practices of sacred service and spiritual counseling and tithing and beloved community, that all of these spiritual practices include other folks, meaning you are in a relationship when you are being of sacred service. You are in a relationship when you are sitting with your practitioner. You are in a relationship when you are giving as a spiritual practice. And you are in a relationship just like you are right now, joining in this beloved community. Now, you may have noticed that I'm pretty mindful when I use I or me or mine versus you and yours versus we or us or ours. And going back to Niels Bohr being trapped in the language, well, here is one of those things that is perhaps a freeing of that trap. Because I discovered that it's really important for me to be able to distinguish what is mine to heal and grow versus what is to be healed and grown in the realm of relationships, whether that relationship is one to just one other, or whether that relationship is in the community, one to the many, or many to the one, or many to the many. But where it is mine to heal and grow, that's something that I take into my own personal spiritual practices. And when there is a relationship, that's where I call upon those bigger dimensions that relationships include, and it might include another person as a part of that growth and healing. Now, relationships, as you might have guessed, are one of my growing edges. I don't think I'm alone here, but I know many of you are saying, how many growing edges can one person have? So, full disclosure on that plane, what I know about myself is that I lay decidedly on the introvert side of the continuum of introvert to extrovert spectrum. We'll call it that. And one of the important things I've learned from this teaching and this path is that being on the introvert side of that spectrum, it doesn't define me, and I'm not stuck with it, but it does help show me what is mine to heal and grow. And it helps me to have more healthy and balanced relationships now. And that as I do heal and grow, I know that I will have better relationships, right? So remember that, this introvert extrovert has to do with what happens to one's personal energies when they interact with others, and how those energies are either increased or decreased as they're interacting with other folks. So those on the extroversion side of the spectrum, they're filled up by interacting with other folks, and they're drained when they are in solitude. So that time alone is really depleting for them, and that time interacting with people really fills them up. Like me, on the introvert side of the spectrum, interactions with others tend to drain my energies. And that time alone, that time in solitude, is really where I get to refresh and recharge. And so knowing that about myself, I'm just mindful. I make better choices as I'm monitoring my energy levels as I'm interacting with people. And I'm monitoring my energy levels as I'm in solitude, knowing how full I'm feeling with my time on my own. And for that reason, I'm able to make more compassionate choices about myself, and compassionate choices about how I be in relationship. So knowing this about my own kind of predisposition, that might seem a little counter to the science mind teaching, maybe that I'm giving into a false perception or belief, or that I'm accepting less than I really ought to. But spiritual growth is a meet you where you are proposition. And this one is where I meet me where I am, which is recognizing where my energies are in relating to folks, recognizing where I am in order to heal that and to grow my consciousness. Now, a flourishing relationship with the divine begins with being in true relationship to oneself. And it begins when you cultivate a mutually beneficial, honest self-relationship in order to have relationship with that essential self, that capital S self, And that capital S self within you, within me, is pure spirit. So you are having that true relationship with yourself in order to cultivate this relationship with the spirit that indwells and surrounds you, to be in deep and fulfilling relationship with that universal intelligence, love, and compassion. Now, that relationship with the divine is a relationship that extends and expands to all other extensions and emanations of the divine. And those extensions and emanations, those appear as people and places and things. And each person has this tremendous ability to develop this relationship with God within. And as one cultivates that relationship to the God within, one easily cultivates a relationship to all God's creation, which means relationships to the surrounding world. And there are instances where it works just the other way around, that you cultivate this relationship with the world around you, and in so doing, you see or connect with living spirit in all of that outer world, and that evokes within you that living spirit. So like all things in life and relationships, there are healthy boundaries and happy balances. A Course in Miracles says relationships are that metaphysical learning intensive. And some kinds of healing and growth are really only possible through relationships. So how many times have you heard somebody say something like this? I just can't live without this person. Or is this person ever nosy? I really depend on this person. This person is always depending on me. Or that person's a real giver. Or this other person, they're a real taker. And they're types of relationships that foster healing and growth, but they are kind of a connection. They're all types of relationships that foster healing and growth, but that because they are a connection, a circulation of something ethereal, there's something behind just the physical form of those relationships, but these relationships tend to lack healthy boundaries and are kind of out of balance. Well, what are the highest intentions for all relationships with self, with another, or to a community? Well, the first is mutual benefit. The relationship has to be equally giving and taking, mutually fulfilling. There has to be a healthy interdependence. There are times where one is dependent on the other, and other times it's just the opposite. But it's all in a healthy interdependent balance. There are healthy boundaries, meaning each person feels safe to be who they are. And healthy boundaries also means that there is a mutual respect in the relationship. And finally, there's a healthy balance. The relationship is not out of proportion to some other part of either person in that relationship's life. That relationship is in balance with all other good things in each person's life. As is often the case, those outer relationships are a mirror of an inner relationship. So put another way, as you heal and grow your relationship with Living Spirit, it creates the possibility of healthy relationships in the world. And I say possibility because your part of the outer relationship is really what you're doing on the inner. It's your personal healing and growth. You don't have power to heal and grow the other part of any relationship, whether it's a person or a group or anything else. You can be a healing and compassionate presence, but the other person's healing is often up to them. And therefore, the people with whom you choose to have relationships are really part of your healing path. And as you heal and grow in consciousness, you make better relationship choices, and you make better choices for you and for those your life touches. So let's turn together in prayer. So there is one mind, there is one life, there is a universal love that is at the heart of all creation. And it is sensed and felt inwardly as a love, a peace, a joy, a compassion, a balance, a health and well-being. And that presence, that power, that intelligence, that love, that creation is everywhere and within. And so I know that it being everywhere and within, I am part of that living spirit. I am part of that universal intelligence. I am part of that compassion and joy and peace and balance. And knowing what is true for me must be true for all beings everywhere. So I know it's true for you too, that you and I are extensions and emanations of the Most High God, that you and I fulfill that expression, that experience, that loving kindness of Living Spirit as we become aware and conscious of it and activate it in our lives and carry it into relationship. So I speak my word that all my relationships are divinely guided, that they are infused with compassion for others, and that as that compassion comes forth, I have that same compassion for myself. I mindfully shower the world around me with love and peace and joy and grace. I gratefully and gracefully accept the love, peace, and joy from the world around me, especially those with whom I choose a right relationship. And in this moment, I consciously choose to circulate that loving kindness with which I am already blessed. I do this for my highest good and for the highest good for all those my life touches. So blessing the world as I am blessed, I give thanks for this answered prayer, for this communion in spirit. And I lovingly release my word into the law of mind in action, knowing as it is spoken, it is so. That revelation of relationship truth, and that those relationships in my life and your life are blessed, infused with light and love right here and right now. And so it is, and now it is. I let it be. Amen. Well, thank you so much. You have a wonderful week. We'll see you here next time.